Got it.
Yeah, bud.
All right. We are live, man.
Mm-hmm. And in typical us tradition, we are here, we are tired, and we have fun drinks.
Well, welcome BDSM peeps. I am Professor Porkloin, and I'm here with my awesome co-hosts.
The Meat Viking.
And we are going to continue our journey around the states here, and we have made it to the L's.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a bunch of states left, but the first one is Louisiana, man.
It is. Now, I do want to, before we get into Louisiana, I want to say in our Kentucky podcast, we forgot to mention Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that's because they didn't sponsor us. So if you didn't know that Kentucky Fried Chicken is from Kentucky and it has a blend of herbs and spices and it's the Colonel, where have you been hiding? And Kentucky Fried Chicken, let's just be honest. You want that screen time, you got to pay us. I'll
Dude,
take a three-piece and a biscuit. I don't give a fuck.
I'd be happy with a 4 piece or some shit like that. That'd be great.
Right? Like, I'm not asking for much.
Just pay us, man. You know what? We'll,
Yeah. Like,
we'll
dude,
just say KFC multiple times.
yeah. But for real, I have nothing against KFC. Um, I will say that it is on the low end of my favorite chicken places, but we just kind of felt that there were a lot more other things in the KFC lineup or in the Kentucky lineup to go over rather than KFC.
Yeah, which it is what it is.
Right. And it's not like the brand that's in Ohio where it's only an Ohio thing pretty much. KFC you can pretty much find wherever.
100%.
So, but you said you had the safe word for today, correct?
Yeah, well, we're talking about Louisiana, and because it's a football team down there for New Orleans, and New Orleans is going to be part of our conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
Figured why not the Saints? You
That's
know
right.
what? We can start saying Saints if shit's going wild, and hopefully the internet gods can help us. But other than that, whatever.
Yeah. Thankfully, lately, the last like three episodes, the internet gods have been rather nice to us.
I know, but let's not jinx it, man.
Yeah, So now, if only YouTube would get on par.
I know. But I guess moving on, man. Did you crack open a beer or did you crack open something to drink there?
So I did. Um, but before I go into this beer, I will mention the Chicago-based breweries, the Revolution Brewing Company.
Yeah.
I picked up a variety pack of their IPAs, and I hate to say it, but I just was not impressed. Now, granted, I'm not a big IPA fan, anyways, so take that with a grain of salt. But I would say, by and large, Toppling Goliath Brewing Company and the Pseudo Sue Pale Ale that I had was far superior. But we're going back with a good old Dragon's Milk, the bourbon barrel aged stout goodness, pretty much crafted by the gods at this point. Hell of a beer, like 11% alcohol by volume. Totally
Damn.
worth the
Okay.
money. Yeah.
I forget. Do those come in 4 packs?
Yep.
Yeah. I
And
figured because
yeah,
of the ABV.
yeah, they're like four packs at like you can find them for like $11 to $12, but I mean honestly, they're an expensive four pack. So, but
Well,
when you're somebody like me, eh,
who drinks a 4 pack in a day?
oh no, dude, like a four pack will last me probably a couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, 11% alcohol. Like, you gonna
Yeah.
get fucked up if you have a
Yep.
couple of those anyway. So,
Right.
but myself, I wound up because where I'm at now, they can start selling them. I got myself an old Yingling lager. Now, we won't be talking about that one, or we have talked about it briefly, but when we get to Pennsylvania, we'll talk more about it. But It is now being sold in the state I live in, so I am super excited to pick up one of those original traditional lagers.
Hell yeah.
So,
Ah.
but all right, so we got the safe word and we got the drinks out of the way. Louisiana, man, you've been there a few times, right?
Um, in passing, but my oh my god, my mother and stepfather have gone to NOLA a time or two.
Been there a few times, but I've also been to Shreveport and Baton Rouge a couple times. And you know, I have to say, one of the biggest foods that you can get in Louisiana is crawfish, man,
Oh, without a doubt.
without a doubt. So it's super interesting with what I found out about some of the history with it, though, is that apparently, um, Native Americans they fished for these things a while back, but it wasn't until about the 1700s is the Acadians, which are now considered Cajuns.
Okay.
So they came from Canada and they settled along the bayous. And basically, what they did is they ate the crawfish because it was mostly out of necessity. And because there was so much of it, and it was that cheap and kind of like that poor man's food.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it started becoming a kind of, hey, we're going to eat this as a daily thing. And then, as the years kind of went along into the 1800s and even into the 1900s, crawfish became basically like a spring tradition for people in Louisiana. So now there's a bunch of stuff that does that, even here in Texas and other places, they do crawfish boils, but um, it is definitely a huge Louisiana thing. And I find it interesting that, this crawfish was considered like a poor man's thing, but dude, now that shit's expensive as hell. I mean, you can get yourself a couple pounds for, oh geez, the last time I was there, you're looking at like $10 or something for a couple pounds, and you can't even eat the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so here's my thought process on that. I'm wondering if the price of crawfish and its popularity, while it's considered a poor man's food, has probably dealt with inflation prices due to overfishing because it's a relatively easy fish to catch.
Yeah.
Well, quote unquote fish. It is essentially a lobster in miniature form found in fresh water.
So it's kind of funny because when we get to Maine, which will be a couple episodes from now,
Mhm.
I've been there a few times, and even talking with some of the people, lobsters used to be the bottom feeders. And way back, in the 1800s and 1900s, early 1900s, they were given to the servants and they were given to the slaves because they were bottom feeders. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until like the middle of the what I think 20 no 19th century, 20th century, somewhere around there, where lobster actually became a delicacy. And I feel like crawfish are kind of the same way,
Mm-hmm.
where here originally it was for people who were poor and they're bottom feeders. They're mud bugs. You can be found in shallow streams and whatnot, and in the bayous in Louisiana. But now they've gotten to the point where it's kind of a delicacy.
Yeah. I don't
So
know. I will go on record saying I love crawfish. Crawfish is amazing. If you haven't tried crawfish, do it. If you ever get invited to a crawfish boil, go. Now, keep in mind to prevent us from being sued by the sex robots. Um, if you have a shellfish allergy, probably stay away from crawfish. But yeah, if uh if you haven't tried it, I would give it a try.
the only downside that I don't like about crawfish is that the meat is so small, and that I feel like you have to eat like 40 of them to even feel like you're halfway full.
Well, dude, that's why you always serve it with potatoes and corn,
Well,
you know?
yeah, I know, I get that, but I mean, like, I still feel like you need to eat 40 of them even to have, because the claws and whatnot, they're not even that big. And even if you get a big crawfish, You can get some of the meat out of the claws if you want, but the majority of it's coming from the tail.
The tail, and you suck the juices out of the head. Yep.
Yeah, and it's that's my only downside is that crawfish is delicious and it's awesome. Totally will go to crawfish boils and do it. But man, I just feel like if I'm drinking, which typically occurs at these things, then even the corn and the potatoes, and I've had ones where they put sausage in too, and that's super cool as well. Um,
Hmm.
just man, you're eating a shit ton of those little guys for even to feel somewhat full.
I no, I agree.
But it's super fun. So for our listeners who have never been to one, I mean, essentially, you just get a big ass pot and you get some water, you throw in some salt, throw some garlic, throw some pepper. A lot of times people use a big ass bunch of what the hell is that seasoning? Old
Uh,
Bay,
Old Bay is a popular one.
and then they
Cajun
just
Two Step
basically
is
throw in
another
the
one.
corn. All right, so man, yeah, the thing I don't like about crawfish boils is that man, you got to eat a bunch of them, right?
That's fair.
Like you got to have 40 or something to even start tasting it. And don't get me wrong, like having the corn and the potatoes, and I've had some with sausage in them before. Like it's delicious as hell. But if you've been drinking and whatnot, like you're getting all the meat from the tail.
Yeah.
He's sucking the juices out of the head and everything. But so for people that haven't had it, oh dude, you get a big ass pot, you throw in some water, you throw in your potatoes, throw in all your seasonings. Old Bay is usually one of the big ones that they use.
Hmm.
And you just let that boil for, I don't know, I think it's like 25 minutes or something, or 35 minutes, let them cook up, and then dude, just dump it onto a tray. So I've been to ones where they actually like makeshift those old trash cans, and they
Hmm.
kind of put like a wooden thing on top of it with a hole in the center. So all you have to do is just scrape everything towards the hole and it goes right into the trash can.
Yep. I've
So
I've been to ones that big crawfish boils where what they do is like everybody gets a paper plate, mind you, but what they do is that they've cooked so much of this sausage, potatoes, corn, and crawfish that they just put like a picnic table cover over an outdoor table, and they just dump it on the table and it covers the entire table or two.
yeah,
Those
I
are
have
the
been.
good ones.
That's when it's a solid
Yeah.
crawfish boil, right? When
Yeah.
you just dump it all on the table.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just good. So,
Oh, 100%. If you do get a chance to go, dude, just go. You will have a
mm,
good time. Drink some beer, have some crawfish, have some corn.
mm,
Um, and what's interesting is that there's like a special way of doing it. So for the newbies, you got to get your hands dirty, right?
yeah.
You got to get in there and just crack the shit out of that tail and pop it off, and there it is. Like you're just gonna eat that. And now some people will suck the juices out of the body or the head, others not so much. I mean, you get a lot of flavoring when you do that.
Hmm.
And then if you can get a big enough crawfish, try to crack
The
the
claws.
claws, because you can get some meat out of that too. But the majority of the time, your crawfish is going to be tiny enough that trying to crack it is going to be more effort than what you're going to get.
Mm.
It's not
No,
like it's not like lobster, right? Where you can crack the claws and be like, okay, I'm getting a big piece of meat out of this. So
right. No, I want to make a caveat here. We're talking about crawfish, okay? This is not the same crawfish that if you've ever gone to like a buffet and you had like the crawfish that they offer and it's rather bland. This is like southern recipe food here. Like I've had crawfish that's so hot that like you want to make sure you wear gloves because if you touch your eye after you eat that crawfish, you're going to be crying tears of food joy and tears of pain.
and then
So,
don't go to the bathroom, man, because touching your wiener with that makes it even worse.
oh yeah, like oh no. Yep. Dude, just be careful. So like yeah, we when you get to the southern uh parts of the United States, I don't know what bloodline decided to pick it up, but like they put heat in their food, okay?
Oh yeah,
And,
100%.
and like these people will put ghost peppers in their food for fun, and I don't know why, but it's good.
Oh, I mean, 100%. Like you gotta check it out, you
Oh yeah.
know? So even if you don't mind the spice, or even if you don't like spice, you gotta at least have it,
Hmm.
just to say that you've done it. It's one of those things.
Yeah, for sure. For
But
sure. Now,
yes,
I think this will segue into our next Louisiana tradition here, because when we're talking about crawfish, we're talking about big parties and big gatherings, right?
yeah,
I think we need to mention what is known as the king cake.
yeah. So it's funny. I had no idea what a king cake was until I actually moved down south.
Same.
Because they never did any of that shit. And Mardi Gras is a big thing down in New Orleans, and that whole thing in Louisiana. So yeah, of course it's going to be more prominent than where I grew up in Pennsylvania. So
Mm-hmm.
and I would even think the same thing where Ohio is too. You know,
Yup.
but the king cake is super cool. If you've never seen one before, it's very colorful. At least I can remember the last one that I saw. It's definitely green, yellow, purple, and
Yeah.
there might be some orange in there too. It might just be a blend between the purple and the yellow, but I swear I thought there was a little bit of some orange in it.
Well, I got an image pulled up here, so for the people viewing our YouTube audience, you'd be able to see what several of these king cakes like.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's very Easter-like, and we need to pop this one up here because this little thing right here, this is not an accident or like some sort of human centipede in cake form abomination. This is actually an important thing. So, in the king cake, it is actually custom to place a plastic toy baby inside of the cake. Um, and depending on where the king cake is from and like what the event is, if you were to say bring this to like a crawfish boil and there's the king cake, the rule of thumb is whoever gets the plastic baby in the cake has to host the next party. So I just thought that was a little interesting.
Well, so I heard it as different. I heard as if you get the baby, then you are the king for the day.
Right.
It's not
So
hosting a party.
yeah,
But I also heard that if you get that, then you have to purchase the next year's cake.
right. Which is, you know, I think that kind of comes, I guess tradition dictates that finding the baby symbolizes luck and prosperity, and the finder becomes the king or queen of the evening.
Yeah.
But also, you know how like different traditions will kind of blend stuff together, and you know, meh, it's just one of those things. But as far as taste goes, king cake is variously flavored. Kind of do whatever you want with it, but
Yeah.
traditionally it's covered in cinnamon flavored dough, covered with the icing that we had showed you with the sugar and icing, making it those gold, greens, and purple colors. Over time, though, more populars have became about, and two of the most famous ones are the cream cheese and praline king cakes. So, little thought there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a couple of them. I think you've had a couple of them too. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they're the best tasting cake, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's at the bottom of my cake tier. Okay.
Yeah. When I'm thinking of cake stuff, I'm thinking of a different variety of flavors and whatnot. But I mean, I'll still eat it.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm gonna say no to king cake because
You
fuck, I
know,
love desserts anyway.
you know what this kind of reminds me of, to be honest?
What's that?
Shitty cinnamon rolls.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, like around, especially around Thanksgiving time, you get the really good pumpkin rolls.
Yes.
So the king cake that we had, it kind of had like that roll on the inside, but it was all cinnamon, which I love cinnamon, so I was okay with. But it was like it's like you ever been you just take a piece of like white bread, you butter that bitch up, and then you throw cinnamon on it, and but you forgot to put the sugar on it.
It's
It's,
just straight up cinnamon.
it's just straight up cinnamon. And I was like, well, there are other things that are supposed to be here. Why aren't they here? You know? But it wasn't bad. And if you had king cake and there was no other cake around, I'd be like, yeah, I'll eat king cake. But if there's like, I don't know, any other cakes, including maybe an uncooked one, I'd probably go for that.
I'd probably eat raw batter over the king cake first.
Yeah.
Ah, man, but you know what? It's again, it's usually around the time of Easter, again, Mardi Gras. So it's only one of those seasonal things. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I remember anybody having it for like Christmas. Although I've heard about it before. Like I've heard about people doing king cakes for other, holidays, but I really think it's around Easter and it's supposed to, symbolize the wealth, prosperity, like the new year type deal. And all is that the debauchery of, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Bourbon Street of New Orleans.
No, no, dude, I get you.
So
I
yeah,
I get you.
yeah. So I mean, King. You know what? Again, I agree. If there's other cakes available, I would take those first because the king cake is not my number one thing. But if it's the only thing, then sure, I'll eat it. I'll have a piece.
Mm-hmm. So I think now we need to go to I wish I could English today. This is going to be a tough decision for our Cajun listeners here. What
Oh
is your
yeah,
what is your breakfast? Do you prefer the donuts with the community coffee, aka the brand of coffee, or some boudin with a Coca-Cola? And I think this segues into the boudin that you had brought up, and I know that I've talked about before.
boudin is actually pretty good.
Dude, all right. So when I worked in Texas, every other day, I they would do boudin kolaches.
Oh damn.
D-
Okay.
dude, dude, I got so fat off boudin kolaches. I am not gonna lie to you. Like they were so good. Dude, I so when I would clock in, unless I was like supposed to be going to other stations or doing outside work, man, I would call my boss up who was on the board of directors for our company, and I'd be like, "Yo, dude, I'm gonna go to the donut shop down the road and get some fucking kolaches. Do you want any?" And he'd be like, "Bring back like 10 kolaches for everybody." And I was like, "Fucking got you."
You're like deal.
Deal.
Oh yeah. So for people that don't know what boudin is, I mean it's basically a bunch of different sausages,
hmm
and I think they cook some rice into it as well.
Yeah, buddy. There's also
But
peppers in there too.
yeah, so it's French. It's definitely French in history, but the Louisiana has definitely made it so that they call it their own. You know,
hmm
and there was a oh god, there was a couple weeks back there was a Louisiana food truck that I went to, and it's called Gator something. So it has all the Louisiana style shit, and they had boudin nachos,
hmm
and man, that was probably some of the best nachos I've had in a hot minute.
Right.
Um, oh God, it was so good.
No, dude, I you can't mess with Cajun cooking, okay?
So
So
I
boudin
think
is actually so popular, it is a culinary staple of the Cajun, okay? And it's got everything you could ever want in there. It's rice, pork, onions, got your herbs, spices, and filled that into a sausage casing and you eat it hot. Or if you want to get fancy with it, you do meat, rice seasonings, kind of like normal, but you could also add shrimp, crawfish, or one of my personal favorites would be alligator meat.
I was gonna say you can change those things up. You don't need to have just sausage. You can do crawfish or gator or shrimp. So there's
Mm-hmm.
different types of boudin that you can have.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally recommend all our listeners to try at least one style of it, if not all of them, because you
Yep.
will not be disappointed at all.
Yeah. And much like tamales, don't eat the casing on the boudin. It's usually too chewy for you.
Who the fuck eats casing on the tamales, man? You got to open
Man,
it's
dude, like,
corn.
so back when I was in Texas, like my average work week was about 100 hours. Okay, like no bullshit. And we had gotten tamales one day, and I just like I jumped into it, and I was like, "Om nom." I was like, "These aren't bad, but they're super chewy." And then like there were a bunch of like Mexican workers in our shop, and they all looked at me like, you know, you're not supposed to do that, right?" And I took another bite, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "You're supposed to take the wrapper off." And I was like, "Huh? Who would have thought?" And I just took another bite. I was too tired to give a flying fuck.
Yeah, and you know what those Spanish dudes started speaking Spanish to each other and what they called you? They
Hmm.
called you gringo for sure,
Oh,
100%.
dude,
Look at
no,
this
like,
dumb gringo over here.
yeah, yeah. Uh, Polo Gringo, yeah,
Polo green.
yeah,
That's funny.
yeah,
Yeah, call you basically white boy, saying, "Yeah,
yeah.
this dumbass is not. Look at him eating the fucking husk."
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I'm glad that I never did that. I'm glad
Yeah.
that I never had someone look at me and be like, "Look at this white boy over here fucking up our food."
Oh, dude, I'm not even gonna sit there and try and deny that I didn't do that. Like, it is what had happened.
What had happened was
Uh-huh.
I just I was too tired and I just want to eat all of it.
Dude,
Tissue from that fucking husk.
like working at that company aged me like 10 years in like 1 year. So,
Well, there's another one that's a pretty big staple in Louisiana, and I feel like you can get this anywhere in Louisiana, not just in like New Orleans or just a specific place, but dude, rice and beans. Um,
I
typically
don't,
made with red beans.
I'm a broken human, okay? Like, I thought you said RICIIN, like the poison. And I was like, well, I mean, if you want to go out that way, sure, go ahead. You there? Or did I drop the call?
Not rice and rice and beans.
Yeah, that's not what I heard on my end.
No, I got you. I still hear you. You hear me?
Yeah.
From something about Mary where he's like Franks and beans. No, it's rice and beans.
Rice and beans. Yeah.
But yeah, so
So rice and beans.
man, our internet wants to fuck with us today.
Yeah. Well, you know, it'd be that way.
But yeah, so talking about rice and beans, not ricin, not the
Yep.
fucking poison,
Yep.
but it's it's actually pretty good. I don't know, you remember having rice and beans, man.
Mm-hmm.
Huge deal in Louisiana. Typically, you know, that Sunday dinner type thing, and it's one of those stuff that's cooked slowly in a pot and have that served over rice. And you know, you might find a couple different meats in there too. You know, either ham, sausage, are definitely used frequently. But I've had ones where it's sausage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've had ones that have been like super thick. Like, have you ever had refried beans?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like shit where it's super thick. And then I've had ones that are actually very thin. It almost looks like a chili.
Okay.
So I guess it just depends on who makes it, to be honest with you. But this was also something with poor people because I guess the Haitian Revolution started it out so that you know, rice and beans were the specialty of just the Haitians, and as the revolution came around, they brought it to New Orleans, the people that fled there.
Hmm.
So it was, you know, then Louisiana basically became a huge thing of the Creole cuisine, and now it's something that's basically served on a regular, and it's just to everybody.
Now, I do have a question.
Yeah.
When you had your rice and beans, did you have it with cornbread?
I've had it with both, without
Okay,
cornbread and with cornbread. So again, I guess it depends on where you're going,
right.
but man, I think cornbread is probably just a southern thing in general. I don't think that's really for Louisiana
Well, no,
specifically.
I was just curious. So, because like when I think of beans, like I think of beans and cornbread quite a bit
Yeah.
instead of like rice and beans. And so I was also curious on if they still served cornbread with that or not. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, I think it happens to go to depending on where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's been a while since I've had some rice and beans. I've got a friend that's from Louisiana, and sometimes does big dishes like crawfish boils and uh, stuff like rice and beans and gumbo and jambalaya, which I think we'll talk about in a second. And man,
Mm-hmm.
he makes some real good stuff. So I usually try trading him some food. Like if he says, "Hey, I'm making a big pot of gumbo," I'm like, "All right, man, I got you. I'll switch it out with something. Just give me like a Tupperware container."
Yes.
And it's funny because the last time he not the last time, but one of the more recent times when he did it, he actually lost power for a couple days, but he was right at the point where things were cooking. So he wound up getting his gas grill out and just putting it on there and just letting it cook off of that because he didn't have power for the electric.
Oh, dude, that's rough. That is rough. But at least he
Yeah,
got
so
food cooked.
yeah, it wasn't like he just started it and lost it and he goes, "Ah, shit, all right, now I got to figure this out." No, he had enough of it to where it was cooking and simmering down, and he uh he had to move it onto a stove to keep that thing going. But typical for power outages.
Oh yeah, 100%. So now I have a question for you.
All right, what's the other question?
We have roughly four more things we could talk about in this podcast based upon brewing, other southern foods, and some other like NOLA staples. Do we want to make this a two-parter, or do you want to try and bust it all with the internet connections that we've had issues with tonight?
Oh man, I think we might be able to do a two-parter because I feel like there's some other things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we could probably talk about a couple other things and then come back and do another whole entire thing because I feel like etouffee, I feel like jambalaya, gumbo, shrimp and grits, beignets. Like there's still a bunch of shit to talk about.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
you're I'm kind of on that same prospect that you are, and I think that that might be what we should do.
yeah, let's
Um,
do that.
However, I will finish up with a brewery from here, and that is actually the NOLA Brewing Company.
Okay.
NOLA Brewing, of course, New Orleans, Louisiana. Um, and apparently, it's also a pizza company. So that's something that I learned today. Um, However, one of the reasons that the NOLA beers and the pizzas are so popular, it's due to the water around and that they get their pie dough and their yeast and mixed all that stuff together with.
Interesting.
Yeah, now it's
I would
actually
feel like some of that bayou water would be murky and gross.
yeah, well maybe it's just got it's got pre-crawfish flavor.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, so the there are three major components to making the New York City style dough, which is the water, yeast, and fermentation. They strip everything from the water through reverse osmosis, and then we add back the right levels of calcium, magnesium, and sodium. ensuring the total dissolved solids and the pH levels are the perfect match for New York City water. This not only provides the right elements for their 48-hour fermentation process of their dough balls, but also produces a constantly high quality, perfect pizza and crust. Dough is naturally leavened and fermented using a sourdough starter. And finally, they use the top of the line proofer, which will ferment the dough at a specific temperature and humidity level for 2 days, giving the dough a more nuanced flavor and texture. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then when we go back to their beer page of the NOLA Brewing Company, they got a decent selection of beers, nothing too specific, but the reason I chose this one is that I have a feeling if you're going to Louisiana, most likely you're going to be going to NOLA. Um,
Yeah, I would think Nala's probably your more popular part. I don't think people are going to go to Baton Rouge unless they really want to go to football.
right. Um, and so like they're year-round beers from the NOLA Brewing Company. You can get a light lager, you can get a blonde ale, you can get a lemon basil wheat beer, which is kind of interesting. Um, one that I just like the title of, it's an IPA, or no, sorry, it's an India Pale Ale, and it is copyright infringement, is what it's called. They have an Irish Channel Stout, which kind of looks good, and then they've got some seasonal beers such as a double dry hopped IPA. They have a wheat ale with tangerine, and then they have some Mardi Gras style seasonal beers. Um, just kind of like little bits here and there. Let me see what if I can click on one of these series beers.
So there's another brewery that I didn't realize is in New Orleans, and I've had multiple ones of them, and it's a Beta Brewing Company.
Okay.
And like their more popular one that I remember is their Purple Haze,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a raspberry lager, and I remember it just being super smooth. Now I've had their Amber Lager before and their Big Easy IPA,
Mm-hmm.
but man, when I remember Purple Haze, it's because of the damn um,
Hendrix song.
label.
Oh.
Well, that too, but it looks like a hippie label because it has like blue and purple tie dye together.
Oh, dope.
So I didn't even realize that they were in Louisiana. They're on the eastern side though. They're like real close to Mississippi.
Hmm. The more you know.
Yeah, the more you know. When you start doing some research and whatnot, like damn, who would have known?
Right. I'll admit, one thing that I've kind of picked up from this podcast is trying different breweries that we've covered
Yeah.
and being, for the most part, impressed with what they have, with the exception of being the Revolution Brewing Company. But keep in mind, also not the biggest fan of IPAs, and their variety pack was nothing but IPAs.
Yeah.
That's a win some, lose some kind of situation. So, but you got anything else to add to our
For
episode today before we close out part one?
for this episode, no, but I feel like episode two is gonna be full of more of the same. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have some extra foods, such like I said, gumbo, jambalaya, beignets, mufaladas. Like there's more shit to talk about.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why I wanted to put a good stopping point. We've had some spotty technical difficulties in this episode, and I didn't want to risk actually getting the episode entirely corrupted when we had a relatively decent flow, and we also have so much more to talk about.
Yeah, and I think splitting it up is certainly a good idea because we're usually around that 40-minute mark. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people want to hear us talk for like an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes.
Bro, I don't even like talking to myself for an hour.
So,
So
but yeah, I don't have anything. We can pick this up with the next episode as part two of Louisiana.
yeah, I agree. And with that, we're gonna sign off. And don't forget, we forgot about KFC. We got to talk about Popeye's chicken from Louisiana.
All right, we can make a brief little thing about Louisiana Popeye's chicken on the next one.
Yeah. So, but I've been
Damn
your
chicken sandwich.
right. I've been your host, the Meat Viking.
And I'm Professor Porkloin, and we are going to sign off.
Later.